Broadcasting from the Woodpecker's studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
All right, Stomp, welcome to episode 72. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
72. You made it back. Where you been? Out and about?
The best of times, the worst of times. I had a nice weekend, Pemi Loop, and then I had to go down to North Carolina and drop my middle daughter off for college. So
yeah, that's exciting, though.
Yeah, it was exciting. It's bittersweet. It's sad.
Yeah, where's she going?
Elon University in North Carolina. It's a really picturesque country club type of place. The kids got the best life ever.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Oh, that's really exciting. So she's heading way out of state.
Yeah, we'll
that's
see.
Cool.
She, these kids get this idea in their head that they want to go far away from college, but something goes wrong and we're not an hour drive away like my other ones at Mr. Polytech, and that's pretty close by. So, but.
Yeah, well, you've missed a lot of fun up here, so let's get right into it. What do you say?
Yeah. I say, I put this at the top of the show just because I feel like even though it would normally go under search and rescue news, like we have a naked hiker situation that apparently was on some sort of an acid trip on the Zealand hut. So we would talk about that, right?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, because I heard rumors about that from various people, but let's check it out.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go with the story first. So basically, the story, I guess this one comes from, I think this is just a rehash of the Fish and Game report that was on Facebook. There may be a more detailed one on their newsroom, but on Saturday, August 20th at approximately 6 p.m., New Hampshire Fish and Game was notified of a hiker threatening people at the Zealand Hut in Bethlehem. Fish and Game conservation officers and an officer from the U.S. Forest Service responded and hiked in the 2.7 miles to Zealand Hut. When the officers arrived, they located a highly agitated, naked male on the roof of the AMC Zealand Hut. The officers spent an hour de-escalating the situation and attempting to get the male off the roof. They were eventually able to walk the man off the roof and escort him back to Zealand Trailhead around 10 p.m. The hiker was identified as Brian Cheveria of Boylston, Massachusetts. So Cheveria was arrested and charges are pending. No hikers at the hut were injured and AMC operations are continuing. Fish and Game was assisted by the Carroll Police Department and AMC hut staff. I mean, the crew just don't get paid enough to deal with that nonsense.
I know that's maybe not a first, but first time I've heard of it. And this is probably the earliest the shame drop is dropped into the episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. But and I think there was the rumor mill started swirling. I mean, Stomp, me and you were, I think, pretty well connected. Like I am constantly I get a ton of direct messages. We get a ton of stuff over Instagram. We have our friends, and the word got out pretty quickly that this was some sort of a drug related thing. We don't know. We're speculating, but I will say that there was an account on Reddit that came up a few days afterwards, and I'll just read this. Sure. The title is, I encountered the naked guy on the roof of Zealand Hut on Saturday evening. Ask me anything. So this person wrote, on Saturday, August 20th, I did a partial Z-Bonds traverse as an out and back from Zealand. On the return trip just below Z-Cliff, I began to hear shouting coming from the area of the hut. There was a long-haired hiker waiting for me just above the hut who alerted us, quote, so our friend took 9 hits of acid and is having a bad trip. He's sitting on the roof of the hut naked and screaming at anyone that walks by. So when you pass by the hut, try to walk by as quickly as possible. And the guy who told us this also said that he had done acid the day before on Mount Washington, and the naked man was fine then. So the poster goes on to say, I did need to refill my water bottle, so I ended up staying there for a few minutes, where there was indeed a naked man sitting with his legs above the flagpole. I made eye contact with him. I did not see his junk, but he was definitely naked. He was screaming gibberish and not making any sense. He did threaten to kill me, but it was in a way that I did not feel threatened. So he nicely threatened to kill this person. In fact, I thought it was hilarious, and I really wanted to shoot some video, but the hut staff talked me out of it. So the shame on AMC. You got it. If that ever happens to anybody listening, you need to get that on video. Understand? Don't listen to the crew. So they informed me that the guy had already been up there for 2.5 hours, and this was approximately 6:45. So the doors of the hut were closed, and it looked like everybody was eating dinner. There was only a handful of us outside. I heard him threaten to kill other people, but honestly, it was in a way that did not come across as threatening at all. It felt more like a drunk guy at a bar yelling nonsense. He didn't come across as angry. So he was able to hear him all the way down to the junction of the AZ trail. About halfway between the hut and the car, this person encountered a cop and 2 guys from Fish and Game. The person said they yelled out to the cop in the Fishing Game, "You're going to be telling this story for years." They all cracked up. They asked if I got anything on video, but I sadly reported I had not. They were, when this person spoke to the police, they were unaware that he was naked and on the roof. They just got a report that they needed to come up there. So, and the person said it was a day that I will never forget. So I'll link this in the show notes, but like the comments are great. Like somebody had like this, like someone's like instant classic Northwoods Law episode. Somebody else was like, even after this, he's still going to get an AMC membership renewal letter request.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, right. So it was pretty
I don't know. Poor judgment, though. I mean, what is acid like? A pill form or something like that? I mean, I know just anecdotally that shrooms and this and that are very popular again. But what is acid?
I feel like you've led a very sheltered life. I was never a drug guy. You know, I smoked a little bit of pot in college, but that was about it. I never liked that sort of dry mouth. But I was around many drugs in college, and acid is basically like I think it's this liquid that they dip into like this chemical paper that absorbs in the paper. Yeah. And it's typically like this little grid where they'll sell like a tab. And then you put the tab under your tongue for a certain amount of time. Like I finished up college around the tail end of where like the Grateful Dead was still popular. So I had a lot of friends that would follow the Grateful Dead over the summer in college.
Oh, sure. It's like that. Part of the culture.
Yeah, there was a lot of acid and a lot of mushrooms going around. But my experience with them was that it was never a situation where people got too crazy one way or the other with acid or mushrooms or anything like that. But I think nine tabs of acid, if they're strong drugs, I would assume would be enough to make you go a little crazy. But again, this is all speculation based on a Reddit account, but it seems to match up with what happened.
I mean, this is what, a 30-year-old?
35-year-old guy.
35-year-old. Okay, let's establish the context. Z-Hut is very popular with families and kids. Mm-hmm. Like, what an ass. Like, that's all I got to say about this guy.
Yeah.
Total ass.
About it. And it is interesting. Like I mostly hike solo, and I don't go to places that are really crowded. But I will tell you, when I was going down Tuckerman's, and again, I don't judge, but like there was a fair amount of like of people on there doing drugs on the trail. You know, not a big deal, not bothering anybody, but it's, you know, it's like any substance. Like I'll have a beer on the summit every once in a while, but you just got to be careful when you're out there. You know, you don't want to mess around with substances too much, especially when you're in the wilderness. So. Oh,
absolutely. Wow, that's a crazy story.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure the crew has like a great memory from that. I mean, it must have been a little nerve-wracking for them, but at the same time, I wonder too, like, what were the friends doing? You know, the friends, if they were all doing drugs too, they were probably not very helpful.
Well, it's sort of interesting for Fish and Game as well, because that's not a typical, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Like I can imagine some of the Fish and Game CEOs experiencing this type of thing with, say, the ATV culture or something like that. There's just this common idea that it's associated with heavier drinking and partying and stuff like that. But to experience this on the trail is probably a little less common, I would think. I don't know. I'm guessing, but not your typical situation for a Fish and Game CO to experience.
Yeah, and I'd imagine probably the most unique thing about this is the need to have to control somebody that's an arrested offender for that distance. You're walking
out
3 miles with somebody that could potentially be unpredictable. I'm assuming they found clothes for him at some point.
Yeah, so that's the end of the story. They did walk him out back to the trailhead.
Yeah, and my understanding from reading the police report is that he was arrested and brought to somewhere for processing.
Rehab.
I don't know. 35 years old and doing something like that I'm an older guy now, so maybe my perspective is a little bit different, but even 35, I was well past my partying days at that point, so.
Yeah, well, the massholes have been on a run lately. Did you hear about the mall story?
Yeah, I sent that to you. So this has nothing to do with hiking, but there was an episode and I think that this mall, in my opinion, like of all the malls that are in Massachusetts, like the South Shore Mall in Braintree is the one that has the most nonsense going on consistently. Like there's gun battles that go off there, carjackings, all kinds of crazy stuff. So This one, there was a video that I'll include in the show notes. A lady drove her car into the mall, and not just like through the original like entryway door, but she made it all the way down into, like, she took a left-hand turn and then made it all the way down into like the main part of the mall, and it's on video, so it was pretty funny. And it reminded me of like the Blues Brothers scene where, and again, we're aging ourselves here, but that movie, The Blues Brothers, was a classic scene where they drove the cars through the mall and smashed the whole mall up. So it was kind of funny, but who knows what that lady was on.
People are losing it lately.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, boy.
So a couple of White Mountain updates we have here. Stomp, I see in the notes here, the leaf blower guy. So the guy that was carrying the leaf blower on the AT, he is in the White Mountains now?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, Jessica W. sends us a little message saying that he traveled through. I'm not sure where he is at the moment. This was a couple days back, but the leaf blower is on trail, so keep your eyes open.
Awesome. And I think that guy, Larry, the Larry the log guy, I think he's local to this area because somebody had said that he had finished the AT, but he was back hiking in the White somewhere.
Okay, all right. And Gingerbread Keen sends a note in as well saying that the presidential traverse does not have to include Clay, Franklin, or Jackson. Some include some or all three. It all depends on what you're looking to accomplish: redlining, gridding, etc. So that's some good information.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I know that there's like a standard route that is used for the FKT that I got to pull up and put in the show notes. But I also got to hook up with Mike again. So Gingerbeard Keen Mike Keen is a great guy. Him and his wife hike a lot in the White. So
absolutely.
If you're listening, Mike, we got to get together soon.
Have you seen any good shows lately? I know House of Dragons came out.
Yeah, I'm actually watching. So House of Dragons, I'm watching on TV. I'm also watching Paper Girls. Have you heard of that show?
I've not heard of that.
It's based on a comic book. It's like a Stranger Things time traveling theme. So it's like 4 girls from 1988 that are paper delivery girls in Cleveland, and they somehow get mixed up in this time traveling situation. I guess it's based on a comic book. It's really good so far. So I'm like 3-4 episodes in. So it's on Amazon Prime, and I highly recommend it.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, we just finished, what's it called? Hold Your Breath, which is neat. I won't go deep into it, but this woman crashes on an island, and it dives back into her whole experience growing up with her parents, but she has to figure out survival tactics to get through this. So it's really neat. Several episodes, so that's worth looking at. But House of Dragons is neat. I can't wait to get your take on this. I thought it was a little Lord of the Ring-ish to begin with, but then it settled into the original rhythm of the first series. So it's not bad. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think that they sort of laid the table with Daemon. There's going to be a lot more that goes on around I think they talked about the decision between Viserys and Rhaenyra around who was going to become the the ruler of the kingdom, and Viserys won out. But as we go further into the series, based on the original story, I think that sort of conflict starts to bubble up again. And the dragons become more and more primary to the story, and there's a lot there. And it's been a few years since I've reread the original source material that this show is based on, but I think right now they're setting the table pretty good. And I definitely liked the first episode. It gave a good introduction to the main players, but there'll be a lot more of the King's Council. Will be their personalities will come out a lot more.
Yeah, it's good. It's not bad. And the writer is directly involved with this, which is interesting too. It's good to see him on there. I don't think the original producers are part of this.
Yeah, I think it's a different showrunner. And I think that the main director guy may be the one that I think he produced. I forget which episode. I'll look in the show notes, and maybe I'll look it up and include that in the show notes if I can remember. But House of Dragons is definitely a good show. It's going to be a little bit more political and a little less sort of battlefield, I think, this season to start with.
Huh. You would know.
Yeah, I would know. Speaking of politics, I feel like I got pushed out of the show here. Like Mrs. Stomp has taken over my spot.
Yeah, she was a hit. Well, you got your run too. You had those 2 interviews, so
true.
It was nice. It was nice to. It was funny. We were really inspired to do that. It was. We was just like now's the time to do it. Let's go. Great feedback so far.
You know what struck me the most is, and I know that Mrs. Stompy, you've mentioned that she's a little bit nervous to come on or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
You must have really loosened her up between the Pemi flow, giving her a few drinks. There was not a whiff of nervousness in that episode. She did fantastic.
Flawless. And that was one take.
Flawless.
I really didn't edit anything. I mean, there was literally no editing. So, yeah, we were on the river just talking about, we were just reminiscing. And I think that just struck the nerve, and we just dove in and snagged it quick. I think people really got to get a good story of our 48 experience. And so thanks for listening, and thanks for all the feedback. There was a simple correction. I guess the Flags in the 48 website is actually .org and not .com. So
yeah, I'll add that to the show notes to make sure that we have the correct link.
Yeah,
as well. I had a couple of notes just on feedback from the show here. So I listened to it one time just to put the show notes together, and then me and Mrs. Mike actually listened to it driving home from North Carolina. She loved it, by the way, too.
Oh, that's great.
So my notes here, so Mrs. Stomp was amazing. The rolling in her grave line that she came up with was hilarious. About the story about the funeral fight that killed me. And then I definitely remember the story that you had talked about the rainstorms coming in, because I got nailed with a crazy thunderstorm at the top of the Salt Slide of Tri-Pyramids.
That's what I thought.
That's when I knew you guys were out there, and I remember just being looking at the thunderstorms coming in, and there was a wave of just bright red thunderstorms coming at me, and then there was an even worse cluster of clouds coming at where you guys were.
It was bad.
Tech stomp. Yeah.
No, I really appreciated that. It saved our skin, and what I did basically was just speed up the pace. Try subtly to get to that top of the ski slope, because it was the only place I could think of for shelter. So I really appreciated that text. Wow.
That was crazy. I remember I was at the top of the Salt Slide, and I met a guy, and he was just oh, I'm happy to see you. He's I really didn't want to go down this on my own in this condition. So I hiked out with him the whole way. Nice guy. He's a local guy. I was talking to him. So it all turned out well. But I was kind of happy to have somebody too, because it was just it was a perfect day, and then it became a crazy thunderstorm. I don't think any of that was forecast at all.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think we would have gone out had we known, but it was pretty hot. Peak of the summer.
Yeah. And the other notes I had here was the first time I met Mrs. Stomp, she was driving for me and you when we did the Mount Washington road race. I don't know when that was, 2012 or something. Right. And I remember her just looking at both of us like we were complete lunatics for even the idea of running up a mountain, being involved in mountains or anything. So to see her sort of transition into a really capable hiker and being, so energized by it is an awesome transition.
Yeah, it's really neat. Everybody's proud of her. She's doing great.
Yeah. And then the only other note I had here was, if you had asked me like when you guys had done the 4,000 footers, I would have said you had done some of them like ahead of time, but that Mrs. Stomp hadn't started until you moved up to New Hampshire. It didn't even click to me that you guys were doing the travel from Massachusetts up here for that long. You've been up north for a while now, so
right.
I had to reset and be like, oh crap, they did that like driving up north for all of those hikes
every single weekend.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we just nailed them as quickly as we could. We were just addicted.
Yeah.
Absolutely obsessed.
Yeah, no, that's great. So this is perfect. Mrs. Stomp will be in the regular rotation now. Have you gotten her commitment to be on more frequently?
Oh, she's more than willing, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, if the need arises, she'll be back. And she'll be back at the 100,000 celebration at Rek-lis. So, we'll definitely introduce some family and friends and guests and whatnot. So everybody keep a lookout. And that is coming up. That's September 11th. And it's shaping up to be a really great show. It starts at Rek-lis. It's at the Pint House. And that will begin at 5 o'clock. That is the Flags on the 48 day. And I'm hearing rumblings that the Flags on the 48 committee may actually be trying to join us. We'll see about that, but that would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, yeah. And let's see, any other news here? Oh, yeah, Skyline. That's tomorrow morning. Larson and Travis are running the Skyline Loop at Waterville tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. They expect to be at the Livermore Greeley Ponds Trail Junction by about 9:30, 9:50, and then continue on to complete the rest of the loop. EMS has been fantastic. Waterville's been fantastic. EMS did post a brand new article on Go East about the Skyline Loop, so we'll send you that link as well for people to read it and check it out. So very exciting time. Yeah, new news here. I'll be spinning some tunes for the Kilkenny Ridge race on September 17th for White Mountain Endurance, so that's going to be a lot of fun. That's that 50-miler, right?
Well, I think that you can do either or. You can do just a traverse, or you can do the out and back.
Yeah, I believe so. So I'll be there after the fact. I guess people camp over and stay, and there'll be a big fire pit and this and that. So that should be fun.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll try to make that. I was going to be doing the Reach the Beach this year, but I think we're going to bail on it and defer to doing another Ragnar race. So I think I may be around that weekend. So I'll keep that in mind. But I'll be at the start for Larson and crew at 6 a.m. Where we meet and stop? Waterville?
At the Tecumseh Trail start at the resort, the ski side. Not the Tripoli Road side, but at the resort.
Got it. Basically from the parking lot, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
6 a.m.
Okay.
Ooh.
I'll be there.
All right. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We do have some feedback about the grid. We talked about the grid, and I had mentioned the fact that there was an 8 grid license plate that I randomly saw one day, and a bunch of people sent texts in. Jen Adams, Corey Outdoors responded, and then I got another one from this listener named Wanda, and she just mentions that quote, just listen to episode 70 where Stomp mentioned the 8 grids license plate, and it was probably a red Tacoma, which belongs to Ed Hawkins, and apparently he runs the grid finisher list as well as several other lists like the redlining list. He has hiked the grid over 8 times and is now in his upper 70s. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's I think he goes by Hiker Ed. I've actually seen him. I think I've seen him in Dunkin' Donuts in Lincoln a couple of mornings. So I think he'll go there on like a weekend morning sometimes and hang out. And I've seen him. I think he had a different license plate. The last time I saw him was a couple of years ago. But I've been running into gridders a lot lately. I ran into 2 coming down from Jackson, and then I met like this. I called him like a mountain Yoda. I met this guy on Bondcliff that, he was showing me like secret campsites and stuff. And he was telling me he had done the grid like back a long time ago. And, so it's interesting.
Yeah. So thanks for the input, everybody. We appreciate the links and information that you send us for sure.
All right, Stomp, I see here you put in a note about more shenanigans in Yellowstone. So I guess there was a foot found in the acidic pools that are in Yellowstone, these hot springs.
Right.
So a human foot was found in a shoe floating in a hot spring in Yellowstone.
Interesting, though.
It's believed to be linked to a death of a person last month.
Yeah. July 31st, somebody apparently fell in. But they do not suspect foul play. So just a little update on that story.
I know that there was a brother and sister that were messing around by the hot springs, and the brother fell in a few years ago. And the sister couldn't save them. So
yeah,
maybe it might have been that person, but it looks like it was more recent.
Oh yeah, definitely more recent. There's all kinds of strange stuff. Here a couple other quick stories we'll just touch upon. A couple people got fined for water skiing the Venice canals. Like, are you kidding me? What are people thinking?
Were they water skiing behind like a jet ski or something? Must have been.
I think it was the self-propelled, if I remember correctly.
Oh, got it.
But regardless, I mean, that's not the cleanest water. Apparently you can get really sick by drinking that water. So I don't know if that's the greatest idea, but man, people pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, they sure are.
I added a bunch of these crazy things. I don't know if you want to cover them or not, but water wars. Do you know that Lake Mead and Powell are down to less than a quarter of the water level now? So now the government has stepped in.
Yeah, I don't really know much about it. I'm interested. So I've been to both Lake Mead and Lake Powell. I was in Lake Powell in 2019 when swimming, and I remember at the time, like, you could see that like the walls of the lake were below what they normally would be, and we toured the Glen. So the way it's set up is you got Lake Mead with the Hoover Dam, and then that's in like Nevada, and then downstream at the Arizona-Utah border, you've got Lake Powell and Glen Canyon Dam. And we toured Glen Canyon Dam, and they talked about how basically like that's the sort of spigot to feed California and into Arizona and Mexico. And that they talk about how critical it is to have this as a resource for the 6 or 8 states in the Southwest that rely on it. But it's a little bit scary to think that they're in this bad of a drought, that the lakes are that low at this point. Like long term, I don't know how that's going to play out, but I do know I saw some flash flooding and some other huge rain in like New Mexico, so maybe that'll help a little bit.
Yeah, so all the states are in discussions at this point, and some states own more rights than others, so it's very interesting legally, and we'll see how it works, but it's ominous.
Yeah, and I think the other issue, I read about this a little bit, and I was like, well, why don't they just invest heavily in desalination plants and rely on desalination from California to support that region? And apparently, like, the environmental restrictions in California make these desalination plants almost impossible to build out. And unfortunately, like, these environmental restrictions could potentially, they may not have a choice in the future, because I know Israel is one of the leading places where they have desalination, and they basically supply a ton of water to Jordan and their own country through these desalination plants. So it's possible to take the water from the ocean. It's just there are environmental impacts, but at a certain point, like, you can't just let those lakes dry up without addressing it. Meanwhile, in Colorado, a man kills a giant bear inside his home with a pistol.
Can you imagine waking up to a 400-pound bear in your house?
No.
Yeah, we'll give the link, but this man woke up to a giant bear that was in the home. There's a picture of the bear, and it's pretty much twice the size of one of the conservation officers that they show in the image. And the man used a pistol to repel the bear. It was a .40 caliber, but the bear was hit, and it charged him. I mean, it's pretty terrifying. The story's amazing. I guess it opened the door to the home to get in as well. So it sort of ties into this bears are getting smarter trend that we're starting to see, which is interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I guess the funniest part of this story is that the dogs were barking. The husband did not wake up. So there's a bear inside the house. The dogs are barking. The husband's dead asleep, and the wife wakes up. And finally, the wife is able to wake the husband up. So this guy doesn't wake up for anything. But he did wake up pretty quickly. He was able to get his gun, and he took care of the bear.
Yeah.
From about, I guess he shot the bear from about 5 feet away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, there's this guy that attacked people at a diner with bear spray. So people are going crazy. This is in New Hampshire, I believe, or was it Vermont? Lebanon. So this man, 41-year-old from Massachusetts, facing 6 counts of simple assault and disorderly conduct for spraying restaurant goers at the 110 Grill restaurant. He took out a can of bear spray, sprayed at a couple of people. Nobody was seriously hurt. But obviously, bear spray is a lot more potent than your basic pepper spray. So, okie dokie.
People losing their minds. I mean, I remember that we had like, I don't even know if it, I don't know if it was tied to the riots of like, there was a bunch of stuff going on in like Portland and these different like protesters, and they were like spraying each other like point blank in the face with bear spray and pepper spray, and it's so jarring to see that. So, yeah, I mean, it's scary. I hope I never have to get hit with that stuff.
Yeah, you get used to it though, Mike. Let me tell you, you should. Did you try it on your Pemi Loop?
No, I did not. It's the one thing I didn't experience. So, one other news article I have is there was a bear attack in Vermont this week.
Just happened. It literally
just
before we came on air.
Yeah, breaking news. So this lady was walking her dog and got attacked by a bear. I think it had bit her in the leg or something. And she had a Jack Russell Terrier, which is a small dog, but the dog was able to bark and scare the bear away. But It's very interesting. I had never really read about a violent attack from a black bear in New England in a long time. So,
well, I think it's like the 3rd or 4th in the history of the state, and they suspected it might be because she walked between the mama and the cubs. Yeah, but
and that's always my fear when I'm hiking like narrow, sort of winding trails. Is like I don't want to, stumble upon a bear by accident like that. So I'm always like clacking my poles together or trying to make a little bit of noise if I'm going around a narrow corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So, and then I think before we get into sponsoring Coffee Talk, we talked about the Dolomites in Italy, going back to Italy for a minute.
Yeah.
We had talked about those a couple of episodes ago, and one of the listeners, Brant, had reached out to us and had given a heads up that him and his wife had gone on a hike. They did an 80-mile hut-to-hut hike in the Dolomites, so he was giving me a little bit of the 411 on the Dolomites in Italy, and sounds like a cool place. Definitely on my list of places to visit.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. There was one story I took out regarding all the rock falls related to the drought out in the European ranges. So
interesting. Yeah, so the drier it gets, the more likely it is to create a slide.
Yeah. Now we have some sponsors, correct?
Yeah, let's go, Stomp.
Apparently, we have some visitors to Spinners, which is really cool. So one person wrote us and told us that they visited Spinners following the Mrs. Stomp episode, so that's really nice. So Spinners, again, is, it's family operated since 1994. They're pretty much number one in the region in Andover, and they're right off of 93, Dascombe Road, down in Mass. So when you're coming back from your hike, stop by. They make some killer food. And they have stickers, which is very nice. EMS has been fantastic lately, amazing. It's such a great partnership we have developing here. They are your Northeast go-to for outdoor gear, guidance, education, and more since 1967. Check them out at ems.com. And of course, last but not least, at Rek-lis Brewing, where you'll enjoy the best food, craft beer, and fun just 15 minutes from Franconia Notch, many 4,000 footers, and less than 10 minutes from the Five Corners. And of course, they are hosting our 100K on the 11th, which is super exciting. Can't wait to meet everybody. Let's see, for donations, we have a couple. We have Eric T. donated 5 coffees. Bobby OC 23 donated 5, and he's the fellow that stated that we found our groove, Mike. Congratulations.
You're in our groove.
Dan Morris, 731, hiked Huntington Ravine Trail. I must have put that in the wrong spot. Sorry. And then Shandy donated 3. And then finally, Coffee and Vinyl, parentheses, Dan MC, donated 3. And also supporting Spinners. He says that's one of his favorite places. So super cool.
Oh, great.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Well, welcome to episode 72 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, we are going to discuss a recent backpacking trip around the Pemigewasset Wilderness. This classic hike is known as the Pemi Loop, and we will dive into all of the logistics, challenges, and info you need to plan out a single day, overnight, or multi-night trip on the Pemi. Later in the show, we'll have some updates on search and rescues in and around Franconia and Mount Washington. So I am not Mrs. Stomp. I am Mike.
And I'm Mr. Stomp. Let's get started.
Let's get started. Yoo-hoo. So, Stomp, I'm drinking water tonight, so there's no beer talk. When I got back from driving to North Carolina and moving my daughter into her dorm, I immediately got hit with a stomach virus. So I've been sick for like the last 3 days, just trying to power through work and sleeping like 12-hour days. So I'm just not ready for drinking yet.
Yeah, well, I hope you feel better. Thanks for doing this before Friday.
Yep.
And, well, I'll take care of it for you. I'm having a classic whiskey sour, my classic EDM go-to. So not that I'm mixing or anything right now, but I've got you covered.
Geez, whiskey sour. You're going to end up naked on your roof. You're like, calm down, Stomp.
I know fishing game officers coming. They're coming.
Exactly. All right, so we're doing a whole segment on my most recent hike, so I'm trying to remember if I hiked anywhere else besides. No, I don't think I have. So any recent hikes for you, Stomp?
Just little stuff. I have actually made it out on a couple rescues, so that I'm chalking that up as a hike, but nothing dramatic. I mean, my hope before the leaf peeping season is to get out to that Hazelton Brook again to finish that, but yeah, we'll see what happens. We do have a couple notable hikes, just a few. Camellia and Lance did Scour. A Folsom 33 did Mount Carrigain via Desolation and the Carrigain Notch. Dan Morris submitted Huntington's Ravine, and he listened to the Huntington's episode on the way home. So, Mike, you're starting to influence people with the Huntington's episodes here.
I had that video on our YouTube page as well, at the lower section.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. It's such a great spot. One with the Speed did a Prezi Traverse. Congratulations. That's super cool. June Collective 26 suggested that we do a notable bike of the week, and I'm like, neat idea, maybe sometime or another, but again, this is a hiking show for the most part. The only time we talk about bikes is when they're flying down the bald face with a drone chasing after them.
Yeah. I used to be a more of a rider than I am now. I got my bike set up and I've got my Wahoo kicker ready to go, and
nice.
I'll be virtually biking, but I don't think I'll be getting out on the road anytime soon.
That's awesome. But let's hear about your stories.
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
Great. So we'll go into the main segment here. So we wanted to do a deep dive on Pemi Loop. I just did a full, basically a 3-day, 2-night Pemi Loop. So I thought that we could do a full segment on this. We've talked about a Pemi Loop previously with Stomp and Alvaro, and I had joined them for most of that. So we've talked about this in a little bit of detail. I think that particular trip we started on Lincoln Woods and went up the Bond Cliff Trail, so we went counterclockwise. The trip that I did is probably what you would call a more traditional Pemi Loop, which is clockwise. So you start from Lincoln Woods and then head up Osseo and go in that direction. So there's a number of reasons why I think that's a better way to go that I'll talk about as we get into this. But I think just to start with, from a logistics perspective, most of the time when people talk about doing a Pemi Loop, you can technically start anywhere along the trail, and there's many different points where you can start it. But most people choose to start in Lincoln Woods just because that's the closest trailhead to the loop. So if you go from like Falling Waters, or you go from Flume Slide, or if you go from Greenleaf or Skookumchuck or whatever, like it just adds extra distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the traditional spot is Lincoln Woods, but you're saying you could start at, say, Skookumchuck and do a loop from there and wrap it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go from anywhere you want, any trail that basically, like, starting from Lincoln Woods, which is kind of like 6 o'clock, you could do Flume Slide, you could do Falling Waters Old Bridle, you could do Greenleaf, Skookumchuck, Garfield, Garfield Ridge Trail. I forget what that Garfield, whatever is from Route 3, and then just make your way around. And any of those trails connect to the Pemi Loop. But the point is that, like, Lincoln Woods makes the most sense to do it less distance wise because it's the closest to the main trail.
Sure. And it is a pretty big lot as well for parking.
It is, yeah. And, from a parking perspective, I went with my friend Jay, who is an inexperienced backpacker. He's done a couple of hikes with me. He does Reach the Beach. He runs with me on the weekends sometimes, so he's a friend from my hometown. And then I also was joined by Bo, who is my wife's cousin's husband. I don't know what that makes him to me, but he joined me for the whole trip. So Jay was only going to go for one day, so we decided that we were going to drop a car at Falling Waters, and that he would go for day 2. He would go across Franconia Ridge and then just leave us and go down Old Bridle. But the problem we ran into with parking is that we were going to drop his car off and then drive over to Lincoln Woods. We got to Falling Waters and so we got there around 10 o'clock, 10:15 on Friday, and the parking lot was full.
Okay.
So
Lincoln Woods.
We had to do, Lincoln Woods was. And at the same time, there was a rescue being staged.
Right.
Down about a quarter mile ahead, there was probably about 15 cars.
What about the Kangamangas? Couldn't you park on the side?
Well, so he was going to be leaving. So he wasn't going to do the full loop. So he was going to leave off of Franconia Ridge.
Yeah, gotcha.
So what we ended up doing was just going up to Cannon. And I was like, look, you can still go down Old Bridle, or you can go down Greenleaf, and then it'll take you right out to the Cannon parking lot. It's the same distance. Yeah. So we dropped his car off at Cannon, and then drove to Lincoln Woods, got in the parking lot at Lincoln Woods, and there was no parking spot, so we had to drive on the road. Luckily, we were able to get, like, the first spot close to the bridge. So I just parked there. Bo was literally pulling up as I pulled up, so it worked out perfect. He parked right behind me, and then we just started our hike on the Lincoln Woods Trail. We didn't even have to go over the parking lot side. We just cut over to the beginning of the trail on the west side of the Pen.
Okay.
Yeah. So it worked out good. So the three of us, we headed out. Our day one plan was basically Lincoln Woods, up Osseo to the Liberty Springs tent site. So this is a tough stretch. I started with, probably about a liter of water is what I figured I'd need, and that worked out pretty well. But it's a tough stretch, so the lower portion of Osseo is basically like your last option to grab water. So we had a 10:30 start, plenty of time to get to the campground. So
how was the weather?
Weather was good. It was like cloudy, but a high ceiling.
Okay.
That's the way I would put it. So cloudy, mostly cloudy, somewhat a little bit of sun, with a pretty high ceiling. So, when you climb the first section up Osseo to Flume, it's a steep climb. It's a terrifying 25 steep climb. Jay was not acclimated to, like, doing that type of a hike with the gear that he had on. Like, I tried to strip down a little bit of his weight, but he was still carrying pretty heavy pack, probably 30 pounds, I would guess. And, it was tough. And Bo, he did fine. They did fine. We spent a lot of time up on Flume. And then that, like, dip into the coal and then the climb back up to Liberty is like an ass kick.
It is.
If you're not used to it.
That's a mile.
So, yeah, exactly. So when we got up to the Liberty, we spent a lot of time up there as well. There was like a camp group there, and we were like, oh, they're staying at the tent site, so there's going to be like a big camp group there, like 10 kids, which was fine. They had the platforms for them, but we had some great views. The ceiling was like right a little bit, probably about 2,000 feet above us. So you had like that kind of a cool view of the cloud ceiling sitting up there, and I posted some pictures on our Instagram of it. So it's pretty nice view. But at that point, Jay wasn't feeling great. His leg was hurting.
Okay.
So we were kind of powwowing together, figuring out like, okay, well, if you're going to go across Franconia Ridge tomorrow, is that going to work? Or do we need to come up with plan B? Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't think I can go across the ridge. I don't want to slow you guys down or whatever. So we decided he was going to go down Liberty Springs and just hike the bike path back
to Cannon.
Yeah, so that's what he did on day 2, and that worked out perfect. But anyway, we ended up getting down to Liberty Springs. It's about a quarter mile down the trail, so it is a little bit off trail. And we got set up there. We were able to find an open tent platform. Me and Bo both had hammocks, so we set up on either side of the tent platform, and then Jay set up. He had my tent. I have a one-person REI quarter dome tent.
Yep.
So he set that up.
So that's good.
I had my hammock. Bo had his hammock. We put our tarps up. I didn't use an underquilt. I used just a blow-up pad, which worked out okay. There were some issues I'll talk about in a minute. But overall, we were set up pretty well.
Refill the water at the spring?
Yeah, they had the spring there. Have you been there before?
Oh, it's beautiful. I have not stayed there, but I've used that spring several times and never filter it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like a nice little like tube that comes out of like a waterfall that just, it was trickling. It wasn't very heavy, but it was good enough to fill up. And they have like a separate section where they have the spring. They have a place where you can clean your pots and pans or your cups, and then the beer boxes and where you can eat. So for day 1, whenever I do a backpacking trip, I always bring like a cold sub. So I had like a large chicken parm sub, and I had a turkey sandwich. So I think for lunch I had the turkey sandwich, and then for dinner I had the cold chicken parm sub, so I don't cook anything on day 1, and I feel pretty filled up, and I drop a lot of weight that way because the subs are pretty heavy.
Sure.
So I took care of that. I ate up at Liberty on the way down, and then we got our camp all ready to go, and we were settled in by 6:30, 7 o'clock. We got a chance to talk to some of the other hikers. There was a group of Boy Scouts there. One of the Boy Scouts was looking at my Eddie Bauer grid fleece, and he kept saying like he really liked that jacket. And I was like, "Are you going to steal my coat, man? What do you keep talking about my jacket for?" So we were kind of joking around. And the next morning he saw me and he's like, "I really like that jacket." And I was like, "I'm not taking it off now. Leave me alone." So, but they were a good group of kids, and they were funny.
That's a great adventure for kids.
Yeah, it was great. There was a lot of kids there. There was a camp there. There was one guy that had like an unbelievable, like a mountaineering tent set up on one of the platforms, like a Hildeberg or something.
Oh, sure.
Like it was like really like going to an REI like camping show or something. I was looking at all the tents and I was like, oh, I want to.
Was it a single person?
No, it was like a 3-person tent.
Okay, like full heights, like 6-7 feet tall. Yeah,
it was like a real mountaineering tent he had on there. It was like, it must have weighed a lot, but
yeah, I bet.
But it was cool. So we were all set up. The caretaker came by, took our money, just was kind of giving us the rundown of what to do and what not to do around like beer safety and food and all that stuff, which was cool. She was nice.
How's your buddy Jay doing now? What was it?
He just was cramping up, and he was like, I think he was like, I hit my limit, and I don't want to slow you guys down for your second day. So
Gotcha.
He was like, I'd rather play it safe, and I personally didn't feel comfortable bringing him across like the ridge and then sending him down Old Bridle if his legs weren't doing good after day 1. He would be garbage by day 2.
Oh, hell yeah. Yep. Yeah. Garfield Ridge, the whole thing. Like, yikes.
Yeah, so he wasn't gonna do well. But we had our plan, and I already kind of had that in my mind that like, look, you can bail out at Liberty Springs. It's not a big deal. He's an experienced hiker, so I didn't have any concerns about him going down Liberty Springs and taking the bike path back.
Yeah,
he was fine.
Okay,
but no, Liberty Springs was great. The place was full, so every platform in tent area was full. The exception was that we had only one person tent set up. We had our hammocks. We went to bed. I got woken up around 10:30, and there was a bunch of noise. Somebody came and set up their tent at like 10:30 at night, which kind of sucked. Like it kept me up, and it like woke everybody up, and it was a whole thing. Turned out they didn't even set up their tent. They were just cowboy camping with a dog
on a platform.
On a platform,
Okay.
yeah. So they were kind of like, we don't want to. I think they tried to set their tent up. They couldn't do it in the dark, so they just cowboy camped with the dog.
Sure. I guess that's something you have to anticipate at those places, especially the
Yes,
high volume weekends and things like that.
I mean, there's no way. I'll just tell you my own personal view on this. There's no way I would roll into a tent site like that on a weekend and try to set up when people are already gone to sleep.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm different, but I just think from an etiquette, and people can message and give their opinion,
Well,
but I would never do that.
What's AMC's policy?
I think they'll take anybody anytime to come in.
Okay.
I'm assuming the caretaker probably helped them out and said, like, here's a spot that you guys can use.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just personally, I would find a stealth spot to stay at the night. I wouldn't interrupt people that are sleeping.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I think
but
everybody's different.
Yeah.
But it seems like they were engaged and they wanted to try to keep it quiet, and so they just cowboy camped, which perhaps.
Yeah, they didn't do a
the
great
racket.
job keeping it quiet. I mean, it was like blowing up their ear pads and like moving. It was like 45 minutes of like, you should shut the F up.
That's great.
So, yeah, but it's fine. I mean, it is what it is. It's a lesson learned, and I guess it's to be expected. But
Right.
I will just say that I would never personally do that. If I was going to roll into a tent site like that and there was no spots, I would find a stealth spot to stay that I wasn't going to disturb anybody. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was day one. Ultimately it ended up being about 8.5 miles and probably about a little under 4,000 feet of elevation gain from Lincoln Woods to the Liberty Springs campground. Mm-hmm. And we were able to enjoy 2 summits and have a good time. So next morning we woke up, broke up camp. We were ready to go by 7:30. So we filled up our water bottles, got our food bags, and said goodbye to Jay. Jay headed down. Mm-hmm. And then me and Bo just broke away, and our mission basically for the day was to go from Liberty Springs to the Guillote campground.
Right.
So we had to start by hitting the Liberty Springs junction up to Little Haystack. So that section there is pretty flat. It's a little bit up and down until you get to the climb to Little Haystack. So we were able to move very quickly there. There was a bunch of campsites along the trail there that were basically broken up by the Forest Service. So they had pulled in like trees and brush and stuff like that to basically shut them down. But it looked like there was a number of people that had camped. Maybe they were like legal. I think they were about 200 feet in. So there was a few legal sites that I saw people were set up in.
I haven't been up there in so long. I can imagine there's probably a lot more of that now, camping up there, illegally.
Yeah. And I think the one group I saw was probably legal. It looked like they were 200 feet in, but it's a conundrum because you got to go, no matter what you do, you got to go down to Liberty Springs to get a water source if you need water, because there's no other options.
Right.
There's no other options once you hit Liberty Springs until you get to the only option would be Garfield Pond would be your next option. So there's nothing else in between that.
Gotcha. It just occurs to me now. Why did you guys purposely skip the huts in terms of lodging?
We didn't want to go that far on day one to get to Greenleaf.
Yeah.
And then Galehead, we looked at the staying at Galehead, and it was like $300 for the night, and we were kind of like, it's a little bit too steep for us.
That's a lot, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. And I mostly wanted to do the backpacking stuff anyway.
Oh, sure. What was the cost on the tent sites?
$15 cash.
Oh, yeah. Huge difference, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's $15 cash. You pay the caretaker.
Steerage.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's all good. Now, ultimately, I mean, we could have easily found spots like legally or illegally with hammocks and done what we want to do, but I wanted to check out the tent sites to talk about it on the show anyway.
Oh, yeah, sure. It also occurs to me that they stagger them. So it's Liberty Springs tent site, and then it's a hut, and then it's the Garfield Pond tent site. So it staggers. It never occurred to me.
A little bit, but Garfield tent site is actually after. Yeah, you're right.
And then Galehead Hut, and then it goes to Guyot tent site. So it's oscillating back and forth. I wonder if that was planned.
Yeah, I think that there's some method to that for sure. And I'll talk about like the difference between if you were going to do a single day versus a one night versus a 2 night.
Yeah.
And how you would switch it up a little bit using those tent sites.
That's cool.
But day 2 was Liberty Springs to Guyot. So the way that you sort of break this hike up is the initial approach would be Liberty Springs to Little Haystack. So that's a pretty flat section. Yeah. Then you've got a big climb up Little Haystack. Then you're going just across Franconia Ridge, which I think most of the listeners of the show know the deal when it comes to that. Once you pass Franconia Ridge, our day there, I was kind of disappointed because Bo hadn't hiked the ridge before, and he's not local. He's from Long Island, so there was no views. It was all socked in. It wasn't like 2 feet in front of you, but it was just no views.
Yeah.
So I was kind of bummed out, and I was like, oh man, I hope that it doesn't stay like this, because we did get views the day before, but they weren't perfect. So I was like, I really want him to experience some awesome views, but I knew Sunday was going to be better. So I was like, he'll get something on the bonds.
Oh, sure.
But once we cleared like Lafayette, we did see a couple of things. I stopped and talked to a group that was doing some measuring with a wheel, and they were from the World Trails Association, and I guess they're in partnership with some of the local trails organizations, and they were doing some research about distance and some conditions of the trails that they were going to be using. I think for research around the preparation for Franconia Ridge's like $1 million like update that's being done. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I was talking to them for a little while, and then I didn't talk to this person, but there was another trail volunteer up there who was rebuilding some of the cairns. Some of the cairns that were up there were stacked like too high and narrow.
Okay.
And he was rebuilding them so that they were more compliant with, I guess they're supposed to be more square on top.
Sure.
And not like skinny, but people just add rocks over time, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. They'd be easier to see if they were more cylindrical.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But just leaving from Liberty Springs, I knew that it was going to be sketchy about water. So I ended up taking, I think, maybe about 1.5 liters, maybe 2 liters of water, because I was just figured like I'm not going to have a lot of options. And I actually didn't want to take it out of Garfield Pond just because I like colder water. So I was like, if I don't need to take it out of Garfield Pond, I won't. So ended up being correct that there wasn't any water sources until Garfield Pond. But basically the way this hike is broken down is, again, you got Liberty Springs to Little Haystack, you got Franconia Ridge, which is, the up and down of the peaks, and then from North Lafayette all the way to Garfield Pond is pretty much like minor ups and downs.
2.5 miles.
You can really cruise quickly, but it's like it doesn't get a lot of sun. It's super lush, super green. I posted some photos on the 4,000 footer page of like the trail from that section is like, it's like you're traveling through like the Smurfs village. It's just unbelievable how like green it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful and difficult though.
Difficult, yeah. I mean, a lot of roots and rocks and stuff like that, but there was a lot of trail runners going by us. Like by that point, we had reached like the single day people and they were flying. So you can make some quick time on that section. So we got to Garfield Pond. By that time, Bo was hurting. He was kind of like, hurting. And I was like, we still got to climb Garfield and we got to climb South Twin to get to Guyot. So we stopped, cooked dinner. Oh no, we didn't cook dinner. I'm sorry. It was like noontime by that time. So I had heated up water and we both had coffee. And that was, that like gave him a second wind, gave me a second wind. And then we had a little bit of a lunch as well. And then from there we climbed up Garfield. That's when we got awesome views. And that's when like Bo sort of had his second wind. He was like, all right, I got the coffee in me. I got the views. And I kind of warned him. I was like, look, we got the one last section coming up South Twin. That's going to be tough. And, we kind of we were doing different paces. Like I was a little bit ahead of him, but I was like, I didn't want to go too slow just because when you're doing long distance like that, like you kind of want to hike your own pace.
Yeah, right.
And we were kind of separating a little bit, but it wasn't like too bad. It wasn't significant. So I would go up, I'd wait for him, then we would take a little bit of a break, then we'd hike together, and then we'd separate a little bit. It was fine. So we made our way through. We filled up water at the Garfield tent site, which is right after the peak of Garfield. And then we went down that section. Remember me, you and Alvaro went up it.
Oh, yeah.
It was like climbing a waterfall.
Sure.
Yeah, that section there there wasn't that much water at all, which was like totally different than when we went there.
Gotcha. And the spring was active?
Yeah, spring was active. I filled up there. I got another liter. I knew I was going to Zealand. I didn't need that much. So from this point on, I didn't have much. I didn't have more than a liter of water with me the whole time.
Yeah, I can tell you what you're approaching now is like the mind blender for me. Coming to Galehead, and that whole section is a really tough moment for a lot of people doing the clockwise Pemi.
Yeah, it's definitely it's tough, and the nice thing was that I think if we had tents, I would have been much more stressed out about going to Guyot, but because we had hammocks, I was very confident that we could roll in there at like 7. I didn't want to get there after dark because I didn't want to set up after dark, but I was very confident. I was like, if we get there at 7 and we've got an hour to set up with light, it's not like they're going to turn us away because we've got hammocks, so we can fit anywhere. So I was kind of like not stressing about it. And I told Bo that. I was like, look, we've got I think we hit Galehead at like 4:00. And I was like, look, let's spend a half hour here. We'll get refreshed. We'll enjoy it. So we got to Galehead. One funny thing that happened is we had 2 young people that were trail running that passed us near Garfield Pond. And then as we were approaching Galehead, we caught up to them. One of the guys was all locked up. He had like a cramp or something. So I was talking to him. I gave him some pistachio nuts. I was like, here's a Snickers. I was like, when you get to the hut, just grab me. I'll get you some lemonade and whatever else they have there for food, and you can rest up. So he came in, and I already had like lemonade ready for him. And I gave him some more pistachio nuts and M&Ms and stuff because he didn't have any food on him.
Yeah.
And then we got soup. So we ended up getting this potato dill soup, which is basically like a bowl of mashed potatoes.
That's great, though.
So
it's just what you need.
We sat there, and I was wearing my daughter's Worcester Polytech shirt, and there was like a whole group of WPI alumni that were asking me if I went to WPI, and I was telling them about my daughter. And then there was another random guy that came up, and he was like, hey, WPI, I went to WPI. So there's a whole group of WPI people there that, and I was like, I didn't go to WPI. My daughter goes there, but I'm paying her tuition, so I get to wear the shirt. So, yeah. So it was cool, but you're right. I sort of told Bo, I was like, look, this hike up to South Twin is going to be a grind. But after that, it's a great hike down to Guyot, so we'll get a nice reward. So,
did your buddy go up to Galehead?
He didn't. That was the other thing, is I was like, look, what do you want to do here? And by the time we got to Garfield Pond, I kind of said to him, I was like, look, given the timing and everything, I said I wouldn't recommend climbing Galehead at this point unless you really want to get it for a 4,000 footer. And he was like, no, I'm fine for now. He's like, I just want to get to the, because it would have been the difference between us getting it to Guyot by 7 versus 7:30, 7:45.
Sure.
And I just didn't want to deal with setting up in the dark.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I think we cleared Galehead at 5. And then I was just, we were together at the beginning of the climb. And then I said, look, I'm just going to get up there. Even though I had the soup and everything, I just said to him I was probably going to cook dinner. So got up to the top of South Twin, probably had about 15 minutes before Bo got up there. So I cooked. I had, I like bringing these. They're a little heavy, but I bring the Chef Boyardee's meatballs and spaghetti. Mm-hmm. So I heated those up on the summit of South Twin and just ate those for my dinner. So I was ready to go. I didn't have to do dinner when I got to the campsite, and, finished off my water there. And then when Bo came up, I can't remember if he ate or not. I can't remember what he did. But anyway, we hung out on South Twin for a little while. There was a couple of other people on there. Sun was starting to kind of set. So when you get up to South Twin, the character of the mountains changes significantly. It becomes like Scottish Highlands from South Twin.
Sure.
Once you clear the South Twin and you get into the open area towards Guyot, it becomes kind of like that section of the Mahoosucs where you're You're above tree line. I call it Scottish Highlands. I don't know.
Twinway is such a welcome breath of fresh air. It's like nice and gradual.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a nice flat section there. So we got, we enjoyed that section. We took some video on it's not Guyot, it's like the sub-peak below Guyot that we just took some videos of the sun setting there. It was still had an hour or so of time, but we ended up rolling into the campsite, our tent site by like 7. And it was packed. There was a ton of people. There was we walked in and there was somebody playing like music on like a speaker. Mm-hmm. It was like some crappy banjo music. I don't know. Sorry if you like bluegrass. Don't come at me, but I don't like it. And then we were looking for the caretaker, and every spot was taken up. And they have this like awesome. They have a shelter built. It's like a brand new sleeping platform, and it's up high, and it like looks out into, I don't know what that is. It's like, it probably looks out into like the Sugarloafs or like Middle and North Shore. I don't know what those mountains are that face Guyot like that, but it's like awesome views.
Well, Zealand.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's that whole area.
Yeah. But we talked to the caretaker, and he was a total, he was like, "Oh, dudes, what's going on, man?" He's like one of those guys, super nice. And I was like, "How do you like being the?" And he's like, "This is the best campsite, and I got the best job, and I'm so happy." But he was like super nervous because he's like, "Oh man, like you guys are staying here for the night," and I was like, well, good news is we have hammocks. And then his face just completely changed, and he's like, "Oh my God, I got the best spot for you guys." So he like pointed us right to this spot, like right near the bear boxes and stuff. So we were able to set up, no problem. We didn't even put tarps up. We were like, there's no rain in the forecast. Like we just didn't feel like putting tarps up. So we just set up our hammocks. First night on my hammock, I had an issue where I used my blow up sleeping pad. It makes the hammock a little tippier. Like I think an underquilt is better. But the big problem with a pad, if you're sleeping, is I had a 40-degree quilt. It was about 45 degrees out at night, and I had the pad, so when I would sleep on my side, it exposed my side, and I was like kind of cold. So luckily, I had given Jay my closed cell, my solid pad, and when he was leaving, I was like, "Jay, let me have the second pad." So I was able to double up my pad, and I was able to like make it sort of like in a V, so that when either side that I slept on, I was covered, and I was warm as could be, so it was no issue from there. So
on the tent sites, the platforms, do they have posts for the hammocks?
So in Liberty Springs, we were able to set up there was just trees around the platforms that we were able to set up. They were like a perfect distance. Okay. And then at Guyot, they didn't send us to a platform site. I think what they sent us to was like an overflow site that you could technically set a tent up for, but it wasn't set up that well. It was like kind of rocky and not a great spot. So I think it's like in a pinch they could put a tent in there. Right. But I think for the most part they used it for hammockers because there was a bunch of trees there that you could set up on. And like me and Bo had to share a tree, and then he was on one section and I was on another.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, but it was beautiful there. Like the new shelter is unbelievable. The tent platforms are up high so that you have a view looking out in the mountains. And like I woke up at 4 a.m. and the sunrise was like bright purple. And it was just like unbelievable. I went back to bed afterwards, but I just woke up for like 5 minutes and just saw the sun rising at like 4 a.m. And it was just, the color was amazing. And the sunset too was like this bright orange sunset, just like on top of this mountain that you could look out to. I don't know what the mountain was. I had to look in Gaia to figure it out directionally, but it was just an awesome sight.
Yeah, I think I know what it is. I think I think you're looking at Zealand, White Wall, Ethan Pond, that whole stretch, Tomfield, Willie.
Okay.
Just by memory, I think that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, no, it was great. And Bo did great. I was nervous like halfway through. When we got to Garfield Pond, I was a little bit nervous about how Bo was doing. I didn't want to push him too hard. And I was sort of thinking like, we can stay at the Garfield tent site. Like day 3 would be much more difficult. I was kind of like of the mind that like, let's push it hard on day 2, and our day 3 is going to be a lot easier because we're not going to be climbing much. So It worked out perfect.
Yeah. So then what? You have West Pond, for day 3.
Yep. So day 3 was Guyot to Lincolnwood. So we started like West Bond is like literally like right outside of Guyot. So we hopped up there. First one's up. We probably got going around 7:30, so we were the first ones on West Bond. Had awesome views.
Mr. Stomp's favorite spot.
Like that was Bo's it was his holy shit moment. It was like, this is an unbelievable view.
It's amazing. It really is. You're right in the middle of everything.
Yeah, exactly. And then just went up to Bond. That's another easy hike. It was a little bit up, but not much. And then over to Bond Cliff, which is a lot longer. From Bond to Bond Cliff is a lot longer than I always forget how long that is.
Sure, yeah. And that's it. And it's all downhill.
Yeah, it's all downhill from there. But there was a good crowd on Bond Cliff. We met this lady, Rebecca, who was with her sister and her nephew, and she was finishing her 48 on West Bond. So we ended up bypassing them a few times during the day. Like we saw them on West Bond, then we saw them on Bond Cliff, and then we saw them again when we were crossing the bridge over the Pemi to just sort of exit the wilderness zone. So if Rebecca, if you're listening, congratulations on finishing your 4,000 footer.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I met an old guy on Bond Cliff. So don't ever skip talking to the old people when they're out there. If you see somebody that's like 75 years old and they're on Bond Cliff, they probably have a good story to tell.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
So I was talking to him a little bit on the peak, and then he headed off, and then me and Bo started heading down, and we were in that like little chimney section where you come down from Bond Cliff, right. And he was ahead of us, so he threw his poles down, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm a little bit slower than I used to be." Blah blah blah. I was like, "No problem, whatever." And I was like, "Did you camp at Guyot?" We were up there, and he's like, "No, I actually camped below Bond Cliff." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Oh, are there any good spots?" Because I'm always curious. And he's like, "I got a good spot." And he's like, and it's a legal spot too. So
wait a minute. So the north side or the south side of Bond?
Bond Cliff. This is below the summit. So if you're coming from Lincoln Woods,
where he camped,
he camped like up on Bond Cliff Trail.
Okay.
There is a legal camping spot there. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but basically, like the guy showed me, he's like, yeah, if you just want to follow me. So Bo was like, again, Bo was a little bit slower than me, so I was like, Bo, why don't you just keep hiking down? I'll meet you. And then I went with this guy, and he was showing me like his spot. He's had this spot for and this guy's like, I'm a gritter and all this stuff. So he showed me like this awesome spot that you would never know was there. Right below the summit of Bond, and it's legal, 200 feet off trail. Yep. And he's like, I've been taking care of this thing for like 20 years or whatever. So
nice.
Awesome area. So so don't sleep on, like, I think if you just look at the spots that are right on trail a lot of the time, there's more to those spots than there's plenty of legal camping spots along the way. You don't need to hike, set up on those spots right along the trail.
Was there any water flowing at that major brook crossing off of Bond Cliff? So
I started with a liter of water at Guyot from their spring, and then there was no water at the 3,000 foot mark of that's called Black Brook, is where you cross.
It was dry?
I think it was like, that one was dry. Wow. The higher part was dry. Okay. And then there was like this next water crossing was, I think the first water crossing, the second water crossing were dry. The third one was running as normal. And then from there was like a couple of different spots where you could get water.
Interesting.
But that's where I filled back up again.
Okay. Interesting.
So what the water story basically was, 1.5 liters to start to get up to Liberty Springs. Then, I think it was 1 liter to get up to Liberty Springs. Then I took 1.5 liters with me to get to Garfield tent site, and then I loaded up with even probably 0.5 liter at Garfield, and then another 0.5 liter at Zealand, and then from there just 1 liter from Guyot. So I only had more than 1 liter at one point of the hike, which was that section from Liberty Springs up to Garfield Pond.
Gotcha. I remember doing my clockwise Pemi, and it was 95 degrees that day, and I pull into that brook just below Bondcliff, and it was running, thank God, because I was starting to get mild heat exhaustion. That was a tough day.
Yeah, definitely. I think here on my notes, I had hardest sections to me were the climb up Osseo.
Sure.
And I was at my heaviest at that point too. The climb up South Twin from Galehead.
Right.
The final push up to Garfield. And then the climb up Little Haystack, surprisingly, was tough too. So those were the tough ones. And then the sections that I thought that you could really fly on was like Lincoln Woods to Lower Osseo. So I think about 1.5 miles, 2 miles up Osseo, you can move pretty quick. Liberty to the climb up to Little Haystack, that section there is probably about 2 miles, 2.5 miles you can fly. And then North Lafayette to Garfield Pond, that's probably a 4-mile section that you can really fly on. And then obviously like Bondcliff Trail and down into that last 5-mile section of Lincoln Woods. You can fly. My food strategy, I took with me, like I said, I took the chicken parm sub, the turkey sandwich for day 1. I like to go cold meals there and carry them even if they're heavy. Day 2, I had a little bit of chicken parm sub left over, actually, that I had for lunch now that I'm remembering this. And then I had the food at Galehead hot, and then I had the Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs for dinner. And then day 3, I can't remember what I ate. I think I just ate like pistachios and peanut M&Ms. We got out pretty early, so I think I was good to go there. And then that was basically it. I had a pad thai like bag meal that I was going to use that I didn't end up using. So that was the only extra food I had.
Gotcha.
And then my breakdown, my opinion on this. So if you're going to do a single day, obviously like the thing you need to pay attention to is your water strategy. I don't think you have the luxury of going down to Liberty Springs for a single day. That's an extra 0.5 mile you're adding to your hike. So my view is that you would have to, I guess, bring enough water with you to go from the bottom of Osseo all the way to Garfield Pond, which I don't know how many miles that is. That's probably about 12 miles of up and down. If you're going to be on a hot day, you're probably talking like 2-3 liters of water. If you're on a cooler period like this one, I would probably go with 1.5 liters and hope for the best, and then load up on Garfield Pond. And then once you get to Garfield Pond, you've got Garfield Pond, Garfield Tent Site, Guyot, and then you've got the Blackbrook. But even going to Guyot is an extra 0.5 mile adding on to your hike too, so you don't want to go there too much. But yeah. I think for a single day, like your water strategy, you really got to think through what you want to do there.
Gotcha.
A 1 day overnight, if you're going to do one overnight, I think you would repeat what I did, but the first day would be you'd start early and you would stay at Garfield Tent Site. I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And then I think if you're going to do a 2-night, my recommendation would be Liberty Springs Tent Site, Guyot, and then out that way. Yeah. And if you wanted to do 3 nights, you could make it a little bit easier and just do Liberty Springs, Garfield Tent Site, and then Guyot Tent Site, and then out. So
gotcha. So basically, counterclockwise is probably harder in general for a single day, even for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I think finishing with Bondcliff, like once you clear South Twin, like you're really done with any significant elevation versus, going counterclockwise. Like you still got to deal with going up Lafayette. You've got to deal with the up and down coal between Liberty and Flume, and then just going down Osseo is just killing your legs at a point where you've gone a really long distance. Whereas I think clockwise, you ease down Bondcliff Trail, and then it's just a flat finish for 5 miles.
How did that one treat you? Because that is a tough one too.
My feet were hurting pretty bad, but otherwise I was okay. I was powering through.
Yeah.
I didn't bring poles, so I gave my poles to Jay because he didn't have poles.
Oh,
so I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't have my hiking pole, so that was the one thing that was a little bit. I mean, that might have helped, but
Sure.
also poles sometimes annoy me, so it was good to not have them.
So would you do it again?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it was good. It was good to get some experience with hammock backpacking. I haven't done that before. I slept way better in a hammock, so I think I'm sold on the hammock long term. I think my hammock setup is pretty heavy right now, so I've got to look at like lightening that up a bit, but I liked it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. That was a good review of the trip. It's such a great experience. And what do they say? It's one of the most popular trips in the world, or hikes in the world?
I think Franconia Ridge is one of the most popular hikes in the world, but I would think the Pemi Loop, besides maybe the Presidential Traverse, is probably the most popular.
Yeah, it's up there for sure.
Yeah. So it was a good time, and Bo had a good time, and definitely, like, I think I was concerned about making sure that both Jay and Bo had a good time. I felt like that pressure to make sure that I showed them that, you know, hiking is really fun and enjoyable, and I think they both came away like really like Jay said that he was interested in doing another trip, maybe less aggressive, and I think Bo definitely, like, you know, he'll be down for another overnight for sure.
Were there any areas that you didn't have service?
Yeah, I don't think we had service at service was sketchy at Liberty Springs. And then we didn't have any service at Guyote. And then I think we got it on top of like West Bond. I got it on top of most of the mountains, but for the most part, when we were down in the trails, like there wasn't a lot of service.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't looking that often. I would text Mrs. Mike every once in a while, but that was about it.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Yeah, so that's it. I'll include my Strava GPS tracks for anybody that's interested in checking it out. You can see the route that I took, and you can get a sense of mileage and elevation as well.
Now, for search and rescue, I think we should go local this week because we're getting slammed.
Sure. I've been talking a lot, so you want to do a couple of these?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, for national, there was a really interesting article which we can give everybody, which takes a deep look into how they logistically took 60 people off the PCT. It's pretty interesting, actually. And then there was a fall off of Half Dome. A climber fell 80 feet and survived, so that's quite the story. But we start on Mount Moosilauke, which is over in Benton, and we have a hiker that was assisted off the carriage road. And I think this is the one of two over the last few weeks, but this is August 15th at 2:55. There was a 26-year-old hiker from Somerville who was hiking with a companion. They summited the mountain via Gorge Brook Trail, and as she was descending Carriage Road, she suffered a lower leg injury on a portion of trail consisting of smooth and slippery ledge, common theme over the last few weeks. They made it a short distance down the trail when they encountered an ATV that was provided by New Hampshire Fish and Game, and also Pemi Search and Rescue assisted in the rescue, and they eventually came out at the Breezy Point Road in Warren. So Carriage Road making a comeback.
Moosilauke's been quiet lately.
Well, yeah. You know what hasn't been quiet, though? Falling Waters.
Yes.
We'll get to that in a moment. First, we have a hiker that was rescued on Carter Mariah Trail. So let's see. On Sunday, August 14th, 5:30 p.m., Fish and Game received a notification that there was an injured hiker on the Carter Mariah Trail in Gorham. And this is a 37-year-old from Andover, New Hampshire, hiking with a friend. They summited Mariah, and as they were descending, this individual slipped and fell, landing on his lower leg, and heard an audible snap, which to my mind means maybe ligament, maybe bone, who knows. Immediately, this person felt pain and chose to rest it to see if he was able to hike out. After resting, they began slowly hiking down the trailhead. However, they were ultimately unable to continue, and that's when the 911 call was placed. Nip continued down trail, but at about 7:20 p.m., the pain was so significant that he advised officials that he would need assistance. So, this is really neat. It's like, ultimately, you want to be able to get yourself off the mountain if you run into trouble, but it's really appreciated when people make the effort to continue on down trail if they're able while rescuers are coming. So it's pretty neat. Ultimately, there was a ATV that was brought up to this person's location, and they were able to drive this individual back to the trailhead by about 8:25 p.m. So for this one, we have just an ATV. So no teams on this one.
So the victim actually posted a follow-up publicly on the 4,000-footer Facebook page, basically just breaking down that this was his first 4,000-footer hike. He's been a resident of New Hampshire his whole life, and just sort of started thinking about hiking. So he was on top of Mount Moriah, and on his way down, he broke his ankle like 5 minutes into the hike back down. So where Moriah is, like that's
way up there.
You're way in the thick of things. So he was able to make his way 3.5 miles down, but he got to a certain point where he just couldn't stand anymore. So he was forced to call for help. So he just, he just sort of sent out a heartfelt message to say, like, some people would probably call it quits after such a horrible first experience, but he's only more determined to complete all the peaks. So can't wait to be healed up and back out there. So hopefully he gets back at it, and stuff happens out there sometimes, and it sounds like he really gutted it out though. Like 3.5 miles on a broken foot is impressive, no matter where he ended up.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. Do you want me to continue with Falling Waters, or?
No, I think I can talk again, Stomp.
All right, you got it. So listen, I got to remind listeners that Falling Waters is generally the nightmare trail that we go to for search and rescue, and disappeared for quite a while, but it's back with a vengeance. So take it away. This is a really neat story.
Yeah, and I think you already covered the one that I was, but when I remember driving by, like, and looking at all the cars staged, like if you see cars staged like a quarter mile before the parking lot, then you know that like something's going on. So I texted Stomp and I was like, they're staging, and I was like, I don't know if you're there, but like something's going down. So,
right.
But this was on Tuesday, August 16th at approximately 6:20. New Hampshire Fish and Game was notified of a hiker that suffered a lower leg injury when hiking down the Falling Waters Trail in Franconia. A group of 8 hikers had successfully hiked most of the popular loop. The group was descending the steep Falling Waters Trail when they were overcome by rain. This made the trail slippery and caused one of the hikers to fall and injure her lower leg. The injured hiker was a 20-year-old from Middletown, Delaware, and initially the hiker did not think that she could make it down the trail on her own. Conservation officers and members of the Pemi search and rescue team responded to carry the victim to the Falling Waters trailhead. So again, the call came in at 6:20. Rescuers reached the victim around 8 p.m. The victim and the rest of the party were given headlamps, and she was able to walk out on her own with assistance. So the entire group reached the rescue command at approximately 9 p.m. Fish and Game would like to thank the volunteers with the assist with these carryouts. Members of these groups work tirelessly when needed and are always willing to give up what they were doing to help a hiker if needed. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And there's always the question of whether you're best to go up Falling Waters or down. And I think the general consensus is it's best to go up.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of, like, a lot of times I will tell people, like, I actually prefer to go up Old Bridle and down Falling Waters, but I do think that, like, I would caveat that to say, like, you need to be comfortable with the trail, and I think if you've done both sections and you're comfortable going down things, then it's a little bit different than somebody that's brand new.
Yeah.
I just like going that direction because I like to see sort of Liberty and Flume, and, like, I think that view is a little nicer, but... Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the next rescue is Oh, so wait a minute. Maybe this was the one that I had seen staged. Oh, maybe not actually. I think this is a little bit later. But
Friday the 18th?
Friday the 18th. Yeah, I think that might have been... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was the one or not, because they were staged pretty early when I got there. But on Friday the 18th, approximately 2:10 p.m., Fish and Game was notified of a hiker that suffered a possible back injury while hiking down falling waters. So that's interesting. 21-year-old female from Melbourne, Florida, and her friend had started hiking up falling waters at 11 a.m. By 1:15, they hadn't made the summit of Little Haystack and decided to turn around. While coming down the trail near Cloudland Falls, the victim stepped and fell about 7 feet onto some hard rock, injuring her lower back and arm. Like, this area, I got to go back up there and see what's going on.
That's the spot. We go to that spot so many times, it's outrageous.
They're going to have to reroute that trail somehow.
Yeah, there's talk about it. I'm not sure if this is part of the maintenance that they're planning, but we'll see.
Yeah, I wonder if they go into the woods and reroute by switchbacking to the right of the falls or not. I don't know.
It's a long story.
I mean, it's going to suck. Like they'd have to cut down a lot of trees and stuff, so it would suck.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully there'll be more that can be made public in that in the future. So, but the rescuers reached the victim around 3:25, and she safely arrived at the awaiting ambulance at 5:30. She was transported to by Linwood Ambulance Services to Littleton Regional Hospital for further evaluation. And then the Fish and Game put in sort of a PSA. Then the last couple of weeks, Cloudland Falls along the Falling Waters Trail has been a challenging section for many hikers. The area is steep and wet. For those reasons, when walking the Franconia Ridge Loop, it is recommended that hikers ascend this trail and descend Old Bridle. It's important to wear proper footwear, such as hiking boots, when hiking wet surface. So if Fish and Game is saying to go that direction, then I'll change my recommendation and say just go with it.
Yeah. I think that's probably what influences my opinion the most on that. But, at the same time, I'm the one that goes down Welch instead of going up Welch. So it depends on your skill level and the weather. Getting overcome by a rainstorm is certainly an unusual circumstance, which would change things.
Yeah.
So it all depends.
It all depends. So staying in Franconia Notch, but over on Cannon Mountain, this event happened on Saturday, August 20th, approximately 12:50. Fish and Game was notified of a hiker that had slipped while walking through the woods near the Tram Ski Trail. A group of 3 had ridden up the tram, planning on touring around the summit and returning via the tram. When the group got to the summit, they changed their minds and decided to hike down the mountains. Unfortunately, they were not following a hiking trail and started down what they thought was a ski trail. The group came to a location that was rocky, wet, and steep with a waterfall. As the group tried to maneuver their way down, one of the hikers slipped, causing him to fall off the edge. The 2 other members called 911 for assistance as they could no longer see their companion. First responders were able to hike to the coordinates 911 had provided and found a deceased man at the bottom of a waterfall. Yeah. Conservation officers and members of the Pemigewasset Valley Search and Rescue Team brought him to the tram parking lot, arriving at approximately 3:35. He was transported to Ross Funeral Home in Littleton, New Hampshire. The name of the hiker will not be released at this time due to the next of kin notification. So, this is, and I don't know if this is the same location where that person who had fallen a couple of years ago was located or not, but I know there's a couple of these waterfalls on Cannon that seem to be the cause of some problems.
More wet ledge, treacherous terrain. The takeaway here is stay on trail. This is not an area to be played with, and there's nothing really fancy to see. So, stay away.
Yeah, I mean, Cannon is just a steep. It's a cliff.
Yeah,
essentially. So it's not something to be played with. But it's unfortunate. Like, I think they probably thought they were confident enough to go on a little adventure, and tragedy strikes. So it's just really it seems like we're getting a lot of people that are getting in trouble around waterfalls and slippery wet ledges.
A lot.
You just got to be really attuned to where you're, you have to have situational awareness at all times, but even more so when you're near wet, slippery rocks.
Agreed. Yeah, don't have much to say about that. I mean, it is unusual. This whole area is the slipperiest area I've ever encountered, in my bushwhacks. It's just awful.
Yeah, well, on to the next story here, which unfortunately is no better than the last story. So New Hampshire Police Marine Patrol said a man died Saturday at Profile Falls in Bristol, New Hampshire. Where's Bristol, New Hampshire? Stop.
Oh, Bristol. That's near me, actually. I think south of Plymouth.
Okay.
Yeah, it's within my region, Campton, but more south towards Holderness, New Hampton, that whole area.
Oh, got it. Yeah. So it is. So it's not too far from Plymouth at all.
Yeah.
So this place is called Profile Falls. Authorities said the witness told them that the man was swimming in the falls and went underwater. People, including an off-duty nurse, brought him ashore and began CPR. He was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. Police are not identifying him until they notify the family. And that's about all the information they have. So he wasn't jumping. It sounds like he was just swimming, and it was just a possible drowning. So,
Wow. Okay.
Interesting. So, next one here is 2 rescues that happened around the same time on Mount Washington. So, during the afternoon and evening of Sunday, August 21st, 2022, two separate hiker rescues were carried out on and adjacent to the Gulfside Trail near the summit of Mount Washington. Again, this has been a bit of a hot spot as well.
Yep, sure has.
Approximately 2:45, conservation officers were notified of a hiker stuck in the steep ground below the head wall of the Great Gulf adjacent to the Gulfside Trail. The hiker, who was identified as a 72-year-old gentleman from Bradenton, Florida, had lost the Great Gulf Trail and became stuck in a precarious spot after attempting to hike up the mountain and regain the trail. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't understand this. Like, the Great Gulf Trail it's a trail in the sense that, like, in the lower section, there is like a trail section that you need to follow, and like you got to cut over the waterfall a couple of times. But ultimately, like, the Great Gulf Trail, you just need to, like, make your way left or right until you get to the point where you just reconnect with the trail. Like, there's nothing. I don't know how you get to a precarious spot there, but maybe I'm misremembering it. But anyway, he gets stuck in a spot after attempting to hike up the mountain and regain the trail. Unable to safely move from his position, he decided to call 911 for help. One CO and one member of Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue subsequently responded to the mountain with ropes and climbing gear. And after some searching and scrambling down the mountain off trail, the party reached the victim at 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. He was provided with safety gear and assisted approximately 800 feet back up the mountain and onto the Gulfside Trail. Once on the trail, if he was 800 feet up, I'm thinking he might have been not even on the head wall. Or I don't know.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that, like, in the lower section, like, it's very easy to lose the trail. Like, from Spalding Pond to the head wall, it's like a nuclear bomb went off down there, and the trail disappears because like no one's done any trail maintenance down there. So maybe that's what happened. Mm-hmm. Once on the trail, the gentleman was able to slowly hike with the rescuers back to Mount Washington Auto Road, and they made it safely to the Auto Road around 7 o'clock. And just prior to making it back to the Auto Road, the involved conservation officer received a second call for help on the same trail. In this case, it was reported that an 87-year-old gentleman from Chardon, Ohio, was becoming very fatigued after spending most of the day hiking to the summit of Mount Washington.
Wow.
The gentleman's hiking partner reported that this gentleman was moving slowly, but that he was having difficulty on some downhill sections of the trail. Based upon their pace, fatigue, and the distance left to travel, the caller felt that assistance would be needed to safely make it off the mountain. Once receiving the second call, the AVSAR volunteer was joined by personnel from Mount Washington State Park, and they began hiking towards the victim's location. The involved conservation officer transported the first victim down the Auto Road and then returned to the Gulfside Trail to assist with this new rescue mission. Once they got to the 87-year-old gentleman, the rescue party was able to help stabilize him through the difficult sections of the trail. Moving slowly but steadily, the victim hiked under his own power with the volunteer rescuers to a service trail adjacent to the Cog Railroad. Once at this trail, a CO was able to pick him up and transport him on an ATV approximately half a mile to the auto road. And from there, they were able to exit out of the auto road by 9 o'clock. So both hikers were found to be very experienced and had packs containing extra gear. But, 87 years old hiking
Incredible.
Mount Washington. It's impressive if you can do it. It's not so impressive if you can't. But
Yeah, they're getting it done, though, huh? 72, 87. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. So
they're getting out there.
Busy time on Mount Washington.
Yeah, that's that conservation officer. Like somebody buy him a beer. He must have just been like, you got to be kidding me.
It happens a lot. Get those multiple calls. Oh, boy.
Yeah. It was nice of them to coordinate those.
Right. And back to Mount Moosilauke.
Is this a second one or is this a repeat of the one you just did?
No, it's second, right? I believe it's a second.
Let me look at this. Let me look at this for a second here. Yeah, this is a whole new one.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
All right, this is on Monday, August 22nd. Fish and Game was notified of an injured hiker. 30-year-old female suffered a lower leg injury and unable to continue. 2 conservation officers with ATVs responded to the trailhead off Breezy Point Road in Warren. They were able to get up 3.7 miles of the carriage road. It's not a bad trail to get hurt on because you can get an ATV up there, but they were able to reach the hiker by 4:35, so about 2 hours. They stabilized the injury. The rescue party was able to make it slowly down the trail, reaching the trailhead by 5:45. Warren Wentworth Ambulance transported the hiker to Spear Memorial Hospital for treatment of her injuries. It was a hiker from Plymouth, Mass. Mm-hmm. She and a hiking companion were coming down the summit of Moosilauke via Gorge Brook. And as they were coming down the carriage road, she suffered a lower leg injury on a portion of the trail consisting of loose rocks. Her companion immediately called 911 for help, realizing the severity of the injuries. They were prepared accordingly for a day hike and were wearing appropriate footwear for the conditions. So, bad luck.
Busy.
Busy, man.
Yeah,
busy.
For sure. And I can tell you there was a call today, too. You'll hear about it shortly enough, but it's been nonstop. Almost daily for the last few weeks.
Am I reading this correctly? But it seems like a lot of these are being handled, by a very small number. Like you're not needing to do like a lot of these carryouts, right?
No, it's been a mix.
It's a mix.
It's been a mix.
Falling water stuff, obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
No, turnout has been fantastic all around. We've been traveling a little bit further north to Berlin and Gorham to assist, a little outside of our neighborhood. But, turnout has been okay. But the problem this time of the year, it seems like there are off days, like midweek days are harder for volunteer teams to fulfill, the calls because people are working and whatever else. So, they do seem to be a little more frequent, just any day of the week.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Maybe when me and you were hanging out with Lawson on Saturday, like a call will come in and I could follow you, Stomp, and get a play-by-play.
You could. You certainly could. Well, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll see you Sunday. 6.
Is it Sunday or Saturday?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm so tired right now. Saturday, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning for listeners that are hearing this. And I think they're going to crush it. The weather's looking really good, and they've been training hard. So very exciting.
Yeah, they'll dominate this. So good time, Stomp. So I will see you on Saturday morning, and we will let everyone get back to their non-hiking related podcast activities.
Right. Welcome back, Mike.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Only one hill! Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.